The entertainment magazine The AV Club made the argument that metal has a huge unaddressed Nazi problem. Let's take a look. Although the title of this clickbait manifesto seems to suggest that Nazism is rampant all across heavy metal, it is actually a case of bait and switch. Despite the general language, the article mostly focuses on extreme metal and black metal, where it points at some questionable bands in order to create this straw man. In and of itself, this should be enough of a warning sign, as it demonstrates an obvious desire to deceive the audience. Not only that, it also shows the kind of audience that this piece is aimed at. It is aimed at people who do not listen to metal, who cannot tell Sturmfuhrer from Iron Maiden, and who will then get the impression that the bands that David Anthony mentions in the article are representatives of the genre as a whole. It's similar to what we saw in news shows in the 90s and the early 2000s when video games would be shown to scandalize parents as rape and murder simulators, or in the 80s when Dungeons and Dragons and heavy metal music were portrayed as a gateway drug into a life of murderous, satanic worship.
There are those who are fearful that the game in the hands of vulnerable kids could do harm, and there is evidence that seems to support that view. Timothy Grice, 21, a shotgun suicide. The detective report noted, D&D became a reality.
It's simply outraged journalism that, although written in a moderately decent college-level prose, fails to make a solid point. I'm not saying that just to sound dismissive. As I read the article, all 2,000 words of it, I kept thinking, what's your point? Now, by all of this, I don't mean to say that David Anthony is not a true metal fan or that he doesn't get black metal. In fact, demonstrating that he is totally a functional adult, he was quick to point to his critics that he has a tattoo on his back of Baphomet. Cool.
That's my credo. No regrets.
Mm-hmm. You have no regrets?
Dad?
Nope.
Like not even a single letter?
No way. Not me.
Now, a big part of the article is devoted to the work of Sturmfuhrer, a side project of Craig Pillard of the band Disma. David Anthony takes issue with the fact that Disma, a band that has never been accused of Nazism, will release an EP under Profound Lore Records. In fact, he states that this says something striking about modern metal's ongoing Nazi problem. But how is that the case? Disma are not Sturmfuhrer, and in fact most metal fans probably haven't even heard of either of them. Not only that, the last time Sturmfuhrer released an album was in 2006, that's 11 years ago. So it's difficult to see how something that stopped happening over a decade ago signifies the current state of anything. To give credit where credit is due, picking Sturmfuhrer was a clever move, since there seems to be little doubt that Craig Pillard has held some sympathies for Nazism. Although he has tried to distance himself from it, calling Sturmfuhrer a shock project, that seems like a pretty bad cop-out. After all, before people actually brought attention to the existence of Sturmfuhrer and its relation to Disma, Craig Pillard did give interviews to neo-Nazi websites expressing his admiration for Adolf Hitler and his condemnation of what he called world Jewry. Now, of course, some might want to say that Craig Pillard is an Andy Kaufman-esque performer, pretending to be a neo-Nazi just to rattle people. That's why he called TV the Electric Jew, spoke of the Great Hitler, and said that he would have liked to have been a member of the SS. That is why he released an album with a swastika on its CD and a limited edition vinyl featuring an inlay with a swastika stamp. That releasing it under Satanic Skinhead Propaganda Records, a label known for releasing openly racist neo-Nazi music, was all just a piece of performance art. I guess you could make that claim, but at that point you're just arguing that literally everything they did was just for the lulz. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to this band, that you shouldn't like them, or that they should be banned. That is for everyone personally to decide. But let's be honest about what we're talking about here. If I go through life being unable to tie my own shoes and eating dirt, I can't really be surprised if people think I'm fucking retarded. Even if after years of doing the same shit I say, aha, I was only pretending to be retarded, joke's on you, I would still seem to be pretty fucking retarded. Having said all of this, the problem for David Anthony is that the article isn't called "Check out how fucked up Sturmfuhrer were" or 10 bands you wouldn't believe love Hitler. It's actually about metal as a whole. And that's where the article really fails. In fact, it really struggles to move away from Sturmfuhrer, as the author knows full well that there isn't really a case to be made here. In fact, he shows this to be true when he keeps claiming that these issues are all unaddressed in metal, even though his article is filled with links to some of the largest music magazines in the world, speaking precisely about some of these issues. It's a really bizarre scene since it uses countless people speaking about a given topic as a clear demonstration that nobody is talking about that topic. Of course, you could say that the issue is unaddressed because no major bands are talking about it, but the question then is, why would they? After Ian Watkins of Lost Prophets was sent to prison for child abuse, we didn't expect every rock musician to come out and say that they themselves are not committing monstrous abuses against children. Similarly, when Tim Lambesis of As I Lay Dying was sentenced for ordering a hit on his wife, nobody expected anybody else to come out and make it clear that they are not in the business of hiring hitmen to be used against spouses or against anybody else for that matter. This doesn't stop Anthony, who uses Sturmfuhrer as a springboard to then mention other bands, including Lord Mantis, Death Heaven, and even Slayer, in the same breath as he speaks about Nazis and murderers. In those cases, the claim is that all of these bands have, in one way or another, done something that he personally considers to be homophobic. Be it the cover art of an album by Lord Mantis, which he calls transphobic, that the guitar player of Death Heaven has used the word faggot as an insult on Twitter, or that Tom Araya is an apparent Trump supporter who called gay people fruits. Now you might think that the behavior of these people is not okay and that the things they said are pretty bad, and that's a completely defensible point to make. However, we can still agree on the fact that they are pretty far from being indications of Nazism. Words do have a meaning, and if you want to call someone a murderous, racist, anti-Semite, or just group him with them, you should at least try to be precise. It's a problem when the meaning of words is diluted to the extreme so that in the end Nazi encompasses everything from Adolf Hitler to a dude who used the wrong pronoun. It's a bit like the kid who cried wolf. You water things down so much that in the end, nobody really believes you. I think that this is an issue that really affects the whole article, mixing Nazis with not Nazis as a way to confuse an uninformed audience into thinking that they are all one and the same, painting everything with the same brush in order to feed the outrage machine. Not only that, David Anthony is also happy to perpetuate some myths in order to keep that outrage going and even to defend censorship and intimidation. For example, he seems to approve of the shameful cancellation of the Murdoch show in Oakland, stating, "For some black metal fans, the offensiveness is just as easily dismissed as part of the package, and if you're triggered by it, that just means it worked." A recent San Francisco show shut down by protests over Swedish black metal band Murdoch, a group that's demonstrated a 2 decades long fascination with Nazism, was just a blip in an otherwise unimpeded tour in front of fans who, if they're not embracing that, tend to rationalize it away. Two things. First, he seems to be arguing that Murdoch's use of World War II as a theme is inherently damnable. I guess he wishes we would all play it safe and only make music that deals with boring, uncontroversial topics. This is the ridiculous argument that others have used before, that singing about something or using a given subject in your art means that you are necessarily endorsing it. By that standard, Quentin Tarantino is a violent, murderous sociopath, Guy Ritchie is a mobster, and J.J. Abrams is just one large human-shaped lens flare. Second, let's not forget that the reason why that Murdoch show was cancelled was because the police feared violence from the protesters. Protesters that, as we have already seen, base their whole shtick on a completely uninformed and uneducated list of issues that they had with the band Murdoch. For a person living in the United States, and who ostensibly opposes the Trump administration's threats against freedom of speech and the media, David Anthony seems strangely comfortable with freedom of speech being destroyed through violence, intimidation, and harassment. At this point, you might be thinking that the issue is that David Anthony has such a deep commitment to social justice, tolerance, freedom, and peace that he just gets blinded by intolerance. But seeing that he's happy to promote violent antifas, as well as people praising literal communists, Maoists, and the like, I think that this is unlikely. It's once again a matter of hypocrisy. In fact, this article represents really the worst of the regressive side of the left. On the one hand, the desperate call for attention by trying to get people riled up based on what amounts to little more than a listicle of bands with wrong opinions, and on the other, a tone that seems strangely comfortable with blacklists, harassment, violence, and censorship. Is there an unaddressed Nazi problem in metal? No. There are certainly bands out there who are openly Nazis. I mean, there is a genre known as National Socialist black metal. But the error is to think that those bands and those people in the fringes a representative of the genre as a whole. Let's not forget that metal, although united by a certain sense of rebellion, is just a musical genre. Some people use it to express their leftist ideas, others use it to express their right-wing ideas, while others go full fascist or full Marxist. You have metal bands that are openly satanic, while others are openly Christian. It's a type of sound that allows many people to express themselves freely. And that's a much better option than hoping ideas get bottled up until they explode. If there are bands out there that you personally find offensive, that have ideas that you consider abhorrent, it is absolutely okay to say so, to distance yourself from them, and to not support them in any way, shape, or form. The problem really begins when we use our own personal outrage as an excuse to silence others. And as we have seen, in a time when being a Nazi is whatever a masked imbecile or some magazine commentator decides it is, we should be really careful about who we empower to silence the rest. See you next time.